very exciting for me that we do have a session on the Internet of Things personally, and also that we've got such great speakers to be able to bring that session to you. My background, I run an organization called Coalition that specializes in creating standards for data about people within the Internet of Things. And I also run a wearables business. So this session is very, very close to my heart. What we're going to do in this session, I'm just going to share my screen with you briefly. One moment. Sorry, minor hiccups. I think that's going to be the day for it. Right. So
I'm back. Sorry.
Freya, great. I'm just going to finish my introduction, and I've got one slide to present, and then I was going to hand straight over to you.
Okay, fantastic. Yes.
Brilliant. So
yeah, go.
Great. Okay. So so what we're going to do in this session is we're going to be exploring how the different things in the Internet of Things bring challenges and opportunities as they interact with people and as they create personal data. I mean, IoT devices have some really interesting defining characteristics in relation to personal data. They autonomously author data about us, and they report what we actually did, not just what we say we did. And these two factors, the data from IoT devices, particularly interesting to manage. So this is a diagram that I've been using for the last 5 years to talk about personal data in the Internet of Things space. It's intended to start a discussion about how we govern data within the space. On the left-hand side, we've got machine-to-machine data with no personal data in there at all, and clearly we should be doing that as much as possible. In the center section, we've got infrastructure that interacts with people. Now, some of that infrastructure may interact with other infrastructure and create non-personal data, but when it interacts with people, it's going to create data about people. Clearly, then on the right-hand side, we've got the Internet of Belongings, and we're going to hear a little bit about cars, and we may put cars in this space. Belongings are quite often shared, and so we've still got shared data here, possibly within smaller groups. And then as a subset of that, then we've got the wearable space where we can probably reasonably safely assume that we're getting data for a single person. So I think this is still a useful framing to think about the mixed data of personal and non-personal data that we're going to get within this space, and how we think about what we're going to do about governing that data. And what's going to happen over the next 90 minutes is that we've got 4 great speakers who are going to talk to you about some of the challenges and opportunities in this space. The way we'll structure the session is that we've got 3 talks of about 20 minutes long. There's quite a bit of time after each talk for questions, so do raise your hand or put some stuff in the chat, which I can then put to the speakers. And then for the last 20 minutes, we're going to move to a panel session where we'll open up the floor further still and give members of the audience an opportunity to express their perspectives and discuss those with the presenters. I am going to allow the presenters to introduce themselves because I think they will do a better job of it than I am. So I am going to hand over directly to Freyja now. Freyja, do we have you?
Freyja, you are muted. You need to unmute yourself if you are speaking.
Okay, Jakub, do you have some slides ready? And are you?
Yes, sure.
So Freyja, what we're going to do is Jakub is going to speak first, and then Freyja, we're going to come to you.
That's fine. So I'll share my screen with you.
Yeah, and if you could put your video on so people can see who's speaking, that'd be great.
Good. So do you see my presentation?
We can see your presentation.
Awesome. So okay,
I can't see you yet.
Myself. My name is Jakub Klodwig, and I am PhD student at Institute of Law and Technology at Masaryk University in Brno. Also, in the same time, I work as a professional in Czech Cybercrime Center of Excellence called C4E. And today I would like to tell you something about wearable electronics. To start with, our session is about Internet of Things. which is the concept by which any subject can be connected to the internet and share the data, which will increase the usability and therefore also its value. Here on the picture, you can see some everyday use objects which are already or are being already connected to the internet, and so they share the data with each other. Internet of Things is called as a new computer era because analysts predict that IoT is one of the most fundamental changes in ICT in this decade. It's technically and commercially possible to place communication models in the objects of the daily use. And this, as long as I connected to the internet, they share the data about the people. But today we'll not speak only about Internet of Things, but in my presentation I will focus on wearables. Wearables are small portable computer designed to be comfortably worn. It's mostly textile or accessories. It can be also other way associated with the body. So from the definition, it's supposed to be something which doesn't bother you while are you using and wearing it. And so you don't need to have a conscience of wearing it while it's when you are using it, while it's getting information and data of its use of your stuff. So wearables is a big thing. The global wearable market is expected to grow from 13 billion in this last year in the year 2020. So you can see that the corona crisis wasn't weakened this this phenomenon, but it's only strongest the wearable thing. Wearable technology is cheaper as the healthcare cost is increasing and the world population has been aging. And this is also a very important shift because as long as there are getting more and more old people and the medical system is not able, in my opinion, to handle all of the people to care personally, I think that the change will be developing the way that the users and old people mostly will get wearable on their homes. So they will wear wearables, and that way you can, for example, check if your grandfather or grandmother is all right, if they are not freezing to death, or if their, for example, I don't know, blood pressure is correct. And if it's not, there are already applications which call an ambulance, which call the doctor, and so on. And this way, I think that the medical care will develop. So, for example, when they will be a bad numbers of their blood pressure and whatever, the wearable will propose some advertisements to these people to buy some medical, which will improve their situation. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, but I can imagine Google or Amazon and other companies proposing medicals, and patients or these people might just clicking and buying these medicals, which can they might help their situation, and it will be developed into their houses. So this is the way I think that wearables will grow, continue to grow. The attributes of wearables, what it is, I will tell you something about its characteristic. It's unmonopolizing. It means that while the user is using it, it doesn't need all of his attention. It's unrestricted. It also means that while you're using, you can do other things. For example, when you go and running, it can to measure yourself, what condition are you in, and so on. And so you don't need to even know that you used wearable. It's also observable. It means that you can look at the screen or at the wearable and check if everything is okay. It's controllable by the user. It's attentive. It means that it can measure not only yourself but also the environment, and it also communicate. It means that it could be the medium by which you can communicate to the outer world. To move on from the definition, wearables might be dangerous because they are supposed to be small, they are supposed to be practical. And as long as also the battery has to be small and easily wearing, they're supposed to be light, there is not enough space or battery to have security checks here. So, for example, it's hard to put some data protection while transferring, and it's easy to get into the wearable while wirelessly communicating with other devices. This way, I can point on some issues. These issues are securities, easy use, lack of encryption, third-party apps which could be installed. But the biggest problem, in my opinion, is the knowledge of the users, because as the users are always the weakest part, from the privacy perspective, users are supposed to know what are they using and how the wearable is processing their data. What are the safeguards of privacy? What are the security measures? And I think it's especially problematic in wearables because there are so many, as you saw previously. It could be a ring, it could be textile, it could be watches, it could be whatever. Everything can be smart and can be becoming wearable. And so it's really important to inform the user. Nowadays, the information obligation is usually made by terms and conditions, which users do not read. There is maximum 3% of people who really reads the conditions and terms because they are long, they might not understand the language. There's also mostly design manipulation, which means that the producer doesn't want reader to go through all that information because they might not be the user's most privacy friendly, and they might be other products which are better for their privacy, or they might want to not user knows that they are using their data to advertisements or other purposes, because users don't usually read it and just click it up. And it's a problematic because under Article 13 and 14 of GDPR, there is information obligation. And the data in your wearables might be also medical data. In a case, you use it for your doctor or your healing. In other ways, it could be also normal data when you're using only for your sport, for example, or your leisure. These, even though it might be the same data, the purpose for which you are using is switching its category. And on the screen, you can see one of the legal bases on which you can process special category of medical data under Article 9 of GDPR. So it's, for example, for working capacity of employee, medical diagnosis, health or social care, and so on. And down there is an explicit consent, and this is which is required for medical data. But usually data are not a specific category under Article 9, but are, let's say, normal. In this case, you still need to consent to be freely given, specific and informed and unambitious, which is problematic because I am not really sure if when you inform by terms and condition and user is not reading it, why if it is specific enough, if the user is really informed, because I think it's only fiction that the user is informed. And so there is a big danger for the user, as there is the privacy paradox and information asymmetry, that what he's using, it's hurting him. And it's especially problematic because personal data could be really sensitive in wearables. There are really great privacy and security deficit, as I spoke previously. Users might not be conscious about the processing, and the data which are produced by wearables is mostly, or could be, easily discriminatory. So I can show you one short example from 10 days ago. Martin Gundersen, which installed 160 apps in his smartphone. I know it's might not be considered as a variable, but I can just show you how the information about yourself could be easily easily breached or easily misused. So this guy made this 160 apps on his smartphone and clicked off all the information and all the consents for privacy. There were some monetization purposes as a way of processing data in these terms and conditions of application. And also there was said that personal information could be used for a range of service for partners and customers. But the result was this. On the left side of the screen, you can see the place where he is living, the Martin, and on the right side, you can see the place where Martin is working. So, and this data were available online. He get this data from other company, which he has no relation, no contract, and it was available online. This American company bought this data. Even though it is not compiled really of GDPR, this is the practice as it is, as it works with our data. Here you can see another example from a random walk of him. You can see how really special was that of his walk, that you can see where he was and where he stopped. And I think it's a problematic, and I propose to inform users that there might be this kind of problem and to inform them more properly. Because as I said, users all might give only 2 seconds while reading or not reading the information obligation. And so in these 2 seconds, we should pack with information. And in my opinion, we might enable that by using pictograms, by using icons, standardized icon. So when the user look at the information obligation, he knows almost nothing how it really works. But if there were some color scaled pictograms, he might know that from the color of that pictogram, red means, for example, really bad, as when you are on traffic light, and when the situation is really good, for example, it looks green. So at the first sight, he already see how the situation is bad for his privacy. For example, the variable will give the data to other 300 third parts. They'll give them data of your usage of the variable. So that way it might be red. So when the user opened the information obligation, he already sees that the pictograms are red because it is not user friendly. It's not friendly to your privacy. But if the variable will not give the data to other third parties, there will be, for example, 0 under that pictogram. It will be lightly green. So even though user doesn't want to read, he doesn't care, he will look at the picture and see that the picture is green, and so he has a knowledge that his privacy is protected much better. I know there are some problems, but we will speak about, but I think it will improve the language barriers. And when you have normal pictures, for example, it will these might not be interested in, but as long as the color will switch, it will change, it will variate, and they might get their attention, even though only for these 2 seconds. And so they get higher and quicker informative effect at the first sight. However, as I said, there are cultural differences. For example, not everyone can see this the same way, but I think that, for example, in the European Union, the culture is really harmonized, so it might work only one set of standardized icons. There's dichotomy of legal and social concept, which means that the GDPR and our regulation is working with some definitions which are not commonly used in society, but and they're supposed to be limited number of that icons, so the user can understand that. But I think all these ways can be minimalized, so the user gets the maximum of this information, and their way make the better situation of now, as the user knows almost nothing of the usage of his variables. So as I'm running out of my time, I will just quick summary that the wearable electronics are specially broad and diverse products, and therefore the disposition of wearables tend to create significant privacy and security threats. And consent as a way of information obligation is failing. I think it's a fail of communication in between the product bringer and the consumer. And the users spend only seconds by considering that information obligation. And in these seconds, we need to put as much information as possible to inform them and to enable them to react. So thank you for your attention, and I am ready for your questions and comments.
Jakub, thank you very much for your presentation. If you've got, please, to the audience, please use the chat to share your thoughts and impressions and questions as we go. And in the couple of minutes we have now, if you've got a question, just raise your hand in your Zoom hand in the Zoom area. Jakub, I thank you very much for the observations about in the sensitive area. We need to think more about the obligations of providing information. I wondered, you picked up on the area of icons as a particularly good way of doing this, in your opinion. Can you tell a little bit about why you think that they're particularly useful in the context of wearables, and whether that carries over to the wider area of the Internet of Things?
Yes, sure. Because the variables are so broad. When you have some product, you might have some pre-knowledge how it works and what the products are and what are the safeguards. But in variables, there is so diverse that the users might not have even any knowledge. So this is why the user is supposed to be really properly informed. And as I said, no one is really reading these terms and conditions as long as they are so long. People might not understand that. They might be even a different language. These all factors can be solved by icons, some pictograms, some pictures, which will show the people that how the situation is with their privacy. And so as long as we would make some 4 or maximum of 9 pictures, and change the color in between some objective criteria, it will make them, I think, really more easy to react to the product and to see. There are already some researches that users, even though they might not have so much attention to privacy, they, if they know that the differences in between different products of the same category the privacy changes, I mean differences, they react to buy these more privacy secure, even though it's, for example, not that cheap, even though it's expensive, they will likely to buy this more expensive product because it's more privacy friendly. So I think if we will give the opportunity to the users and to so they know, because there is that culture that no one is caring because no one really has time for reading terms and conditions. So if we'll make it easy for users to know what is the privacy safeguard and what are the security measures, they will react, and it will propose the segment of variables. At least I hope. I'm sorry, I cannot hear you, Joss.
No, it's because I'm muted. I'll get better at this, I promise. But thank you very much, Jakub. We're going to move on to our next speaker, and there'll be an opportunity to engage with Jakub in his presentation later on. Can I just remind the speakers when you're speaking and to the audience later on, if you are speaking, please can you put your video on so that we've got a nice sense of community and we can see who's talking with each other. So next I'd like to ask Freyja to come forward and to provide her input into this session. Now.
Yes, right now. I'm sorry. It's always difficult to switch between videos and muting myself and things like that. But yes, just let me start share my screen with you. Let let me get this done. Share screen. Yes, yes, yes. This is my slide, and I'm going to put it on full. Play from start. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending this session, and Joss for hosting this this session. It's fantastic. So I apologize. I was supposed to be here a little bit earlier, but I had some connection issues, which is seem to be happening a lot these days. Unfortunately, my connection isn't that good. But anyway, I'm just gonna dive right in. So yeah, IoT and devices, and how are we going to control all of these devices that we are using these days and the data that is being generated by them. So I am a legal researcher. I'm currently conducting my research on the legal framework and the regulation around car data. So cars are a really interesting practical example of devices that most of us are using already, and it's really interesting to see how the discussion is going about who owns the data, who controls the data. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, and to just put some questions, because I'd love to hear your feedback and your experiences in this regard. So yes, what are we talking about? The coming flood of data in autonomous vehicles. So I'm focusing more on connected cars because, of course, autonomous vehicles aren't on the road yet, but we are getting there. And definitely, if you have a bit of a modern car, your car is going to already generate a lot of data with all of the tools that are in your car and all of the systems that are in your car. So my car does what? I don't know if people already know how much technology is in their car. So there's a lot of development going on. Of course, you have a lot of systems that are helping you drive more safely, more conveniently. So most vehicles will have some sensors in there that are collecting and generating data about all of the technology that is in your car. So your speed is being generated and collected. Your speed, the way if you are braking very fast, your tires, basically there's a lot of sensors in your car. There are a lot of cameras in your car that are recording you or the outside environment. All of this is meant to help you drive more safely, more conveniently, and in the future also to give you entertainment in your car. So there's a lot of discussion about, okay, who should benefit from all of this this data that is being generated, because of course it can be used to give you a lot of information about how you drive, where you drive, and your preferences. And that is going to be very interesting for a lot of players. As you see here in the picture, third parties are going to be very interested in all of this data. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So what am I focusing on in my research mostly, and it's, I think, an interesting example, is insurance. So based on the data that your car generates, they can get a better idea of what kind of driver you are. So we already see telematics insurance focusing, for example, on the fact that, or the idea that women are better drivers than men because they drive more safely, they don't speed as much, and as a result, they don't get in as many accidents. So we have some research showing that already, and based on that, some insurers consider it more fair that if you are a woman, you should have, or you should pay less for your insurance, because, well, there's less chance that you're going to get into an accident.
Right, I'm going to interrupt you just to let you know that your slides aren't changing on our screen.
Oh dear. Okay, how is that happening?
So thank you, John, for pointing that out. There you go, that works.
Okay, then I'm just gonna do it like this. Okay, so this, you've been watching this one all the time, right?
Yeah, it's a great slide, so we're not worried.
Yeah, oh, sure. Okay, apologies for that. So yeah, so this was the next slide. So I was talking about the coming flood of data. Okay, so yeah, this is a slide that shows you a little bit about all of the technology that is already in your car. I don't know if it's big enough, but I'm happy to share the slides afterwards, of course. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger for you. Or maybe I can.
I think we get that. I think we get the point well.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So a lot of sensors are already in your car that are showing or that are recording a lot of the data. Now this data is really interesting. I mean, at the moment it's just sensor data, but if you provide some, or if you conduct some analytics on it, you can get really valuable information from it. So as I mentioned, I'm focusing, for example, on insurance, and based on all of this sensor data. So if you are speeding, if you are braking, if you are driving late at night, all of this information is really relevant for them to do a risk analysis. So based on that and based on the research, it shows that certain people drive more safely, drive more risky than others. They used to use other types of information, so your age, your driving history, of course, but now they can really do it more accurately. So there's a lot of value for insurers to get access to your car data. Of course, there are some risks, and people are worried about privacy issues. Jakub already mentioned some of these issues indeed, and that is, of course, definitely the case with cars. So the question that, of course, comes up is who should control the data that is being generated in your car? So a lot of people think my car, my data. Is that really the case? That is kind of what I've been looking at in my own research. So what is the legal framework in place at the moment that would regulate car data and the sharing of car data and the use of car data? So first of all, there's been a bit of a discussion on whether or not car data is your data. As probably most of you will know, there is no intellectual property right in your personal data. So or saying it is my data is legally not correct. There's no copyright in data. There are some other controls over data that in practice will have the same effect as having a property right in data. So at the moment, what happens when you buy a car, you will sign a contract with your car manufacturer or your dealer, and indirectly with the car manufacturer, to turn your car into a smart car. So the fact that it generates data is not enough. It also has to be shared in a way, because otherwise, I mean, who can access the car without having access to the car itself? Or, I mean, who can access the data without having access to the car itself? So you will sign an agreement with your car manufacturer saying that they can obtain the data, use the data for various purposes. If you don't do that, you're just basically paying a lot for a dumb car. So if you want to have a connected car, you have to sign this agreement. Now, they argue this is the right way to do it. So the data that comes out of the vehicle should not be sent directly to anybody else. So even if you wanted to have your insurer to have access to this data directly sent from the car, you would not be able to do that because they argue, the car manufacturers in this case argue, safety and security. Jakub already mentioned that. So a car can be hacked. That is a danger. So it's better if the data is sent to the car manufacturer and they then control over, they then have control over who can access the data. Now, there are some concerns about this because, of course, this would put the car manufacturer in a position of the gatekeeper to your data. So do you have control over this data? Well, you don't have, like I said, a property right in data, but car data is personal data. And we know that the GDPR does give us some rights over our data. So that is basically what I've been looking at and what I kind of want to discuss here as well. So who should be in control over this data? There's discussion whether or not we should have a new right to data. But apart from that, I think that there was definitely an opportunity for the car data, for the MyData community to get involved here. So we're talking about the principles for IoT. But first, let me talk a little bit about another project that I'd like to propose, and I'd really love for you to get involved with, is car data portability. So the GDPR, as Jakub explained, does give us certain rights over the data, and one of them is the right to data portability. So I'm right now setting up a new project so I'm kind of inviting you to join us. So if you have a bit of a modern car, you can ask for data portability. So you can ask your car manufacturer to send you the data, and they claim, or a lot of people think, that this is an effective way to get your data. Experiences in practice show that this right is not as strong as it could be, and I think it could be stronger. So if you have a modern car, please go to this forum and sign up, and I'll help you with everything that needs to be done in this. So based on that, we can do an analysis whether or not data portability is actually a good way to get control over your car data. But of course, we need to do more. So the MyData operators could take position in here. So we already have a few MyData operators that are dealing with car data and that are providing car data to insurers. So the whole idea is, and if you look at the little picture in the bottom, so the driver, instead of having to send the data himself to the insurer, the MyData operator would then obtain the data from the car instead of the car manufacturer, and then based on your agreement, on your preferences with this MyData operator, they will then send it to the insurer in a truly neutral way. Because at the moment, if I go back to the previous slide, the extended vehicle proposal is what the vehicle manufacturers are proposing and promoting for, is that based on, indeed, like I mentioned, the security and also the privacy issues, they feel that they are the right persons to be in control over the data, and then via them it would go to the insurer. The whole problem with the extended vehicle proposal is that it's not neutral, in the sense that there is still a company behind, or who controls the data and where the data flows. And that is basically what we want to avoid. We really want to have you to be in control over what happens with your car data, considering all of the information that can be found in your car data, and how privacy sensitive it is, but also how valuable it is. I mean, should you not be the one to benefit from the data that you are generating through your use of devices? So that was really quickly going through an example of what we are talking about, and IoT devices, and how you can take control over that. So I'm really looking forward to your questions and to discuss, indeed, what kind of principles we should apply to IoT data. Thank you. This is me in the end.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask a request. I'm going to just waffle for a moment to give you a chance to paste that link from your presentation into the chat.
Yes.
Because then
Let me do that. I'm going to.
So while I wibble on for a moment, I'll let you do that. That's really interesting. Thank you. It's a great presentation, and there are some great issues that have been popped up. There are some nice questions in the chat.
Ah, fantastic.
So one of the direct questions that you could start on was, Michael was asking about specifically what sort of data are you talking about from the car? I mean, I think he was drawing the analogy there to saying that actually the car's an interesting microcosm for what we see in all other industry areas. I mean, reading into Michael's question, we're going to get maintenance data off that car, which won't be very helpful. And then there'll be other stuff. So can you talk a little bit about all the different types of data and how the different governance regimes might apply to that?
Yeah, sure. So your car will have sensors in them, and all of these sensors are applied to all of the technology that is in your car. So you'll have a sensor that is generating data from your tires, for example. It's generating data from your motor. It's generating data from your windscreens. Basically, everything that is in your car that makes it function, these days will have a sensor on it that is generating this data from it, which is being used in the car itself. So it will signal you when something is malfunctioning. So you will have an error message on your dashboard saying you need to fill the oil. That's because there's a sensor on your oil level that is recording whether or not it's high or low. Tesla is, of course, a very good example of a car that is really being equipped with a lot of sensors and a lot of cameras. They will not just, for example, have a camera facing you. So they are recording if you are getting tired, and then they will notify you, or then they can notify the car, for example, to turn on certain safety measures. They will also have cameras facing outside, so they will monitor the weather conditions and generate that data, and that will then be used within the car to, for example, change your speed levels or something like that. So there's a lot of this type of data that is being generated. If you put some analytics on that, you can really understand much about you and about your preferences. So if I record your GPS, for example, if I record your location data, from your location data, you can find a lot of sensitive information. And that's a little bit, well, not a little bit. That is a huge deal, of course. It'll know where you live. It will know. The car will record where you live, where you work, if you visit the McDonald's, if you go to church, things like that. And all of that data is really sensitive data. So in the beginning, there was a discussion whether or not vehicle data is merely technical data and therefore not personal data. Well, considering that it can be linked, all of the data that your car generates and is in your car can be linked back to you, to the driver. Of course, there's some discussion, is the owner of the car also the driver of the car, which is, of course, is not always the case. But and it's at the moment generally considered to be personal data. And then, of course, the GDPR starts to apply, and then we have certain safeguards and certain rules that apply on who can access the car and who controls the car. So I don't know if that answers your question, but happy to.
I think it gives a little bit more texture to that point. There was an interesting question. Michael, sorry, I've cut across you there. You went to mute. I mean, it'd be great to.
Sorry, Joseph. I'll just thank you, Freyja. I think that it's a when you get into IoT, it becomes a very the lines get really, really fuzzy, and we could probably talk for hours, so I won't keep on going.
We've got 20 minutes towards the end of this session, and I think it'd be nice to see perspectives from all the presenters, and then we can pick that back up again. I think that's a great thing to talk about. Fred, there was a question. John Craig made a really interesting point about the competence in the industry to deal with this data.
Right.
And I wondered, so you're studying the insurance industry, which has got a good track record of using personal data. I mean,
yes.
Like everything it does, but they are clearly competent at dealing with personal data. Yes. And then you've got the automotive industry. And I think John's point is it doesn't take any of us much to walk into a garage and see the difference between the automotive industry and the insurance industry. What are your thoughts about the level of competence and the risks that might pose to individuals?
Yeah, so although the insurance industry, I mean, I have to maybe correct you there a little bit. Although the insurance industry, of course, is in the business of analytics, right? They are traditionally used to dealing with a lot of data, a lot of personal data. I mean, it has to be personal data because otherwise they don't really have a use for that. Because yeah, I mean, they need to have personal data to do a good risk analysis. Unfortunately, at the moment, still a lot of companies, and you rightly pointed out also the car manufacturers, they are traditionally not in the field of knowing software systems and analytic systems and AI, and they are just only starting to adopt all of these kind of new innovations and becoming digital players, basically. So what we see happening in the automotive space and also in the insurance space is that they are developing these ecosystems. So the connected car is becoming an ecosystem. The car is becoming an ecosystem. An ecosystem business model is about not so much doing it on your own anymore. I mean, none of these companies can do it on their own. So especially car manufacturers who are traditionally manufacturing hardware, they now are faced with having to become a software developer in a way. Not everybody has the technology or the skills or the resources to do that. So we see a lot of them starting to work together. For example, with Apple, they have to work with telecommunication companies to be able to make their car connective with the internet, having to use Wi-Fi technology, all of these kind of things. So the risks there, of course, is it's really difficult for us to know who is in control. Where is the data going? Is it going to, basically how are all these data flows regulated? And like I said, who is in control? So the risks there for us is that we have no control over who is collecting this data, who is it being shared with, is my privacy respected, are my choices regarding privacy protected. And I mean, one of the things that has been a discussion in this field for a very long time, if you talk to privacy professionals, is indeed the notion of consent. I mean, informed consent. A lot of people don't even know that when they buy a new car and they sign this agreement, that they are agreeing to this data being shared with so many different other players for so many different purposes. And that really has to change. So that is a huge risk, of course.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to thank Freyja for her contribution there, and we're going to bring everyone back in towards the end of the session. I'm going to hand over to John and Gloria. Now, John, are you available to start your session now? I know you had a few troubles coming in at the beginning.
Hey guys, how are you? John here. I'm having plenty of issues with my Zoom account. It keeps bouncing me off. I'll try to do my best. Just give me a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Perhaps Gloria, you can start with the short presentation.
Yes, brilliant. So look, I'd like to introduce Gloria, and if you can introduce yourself and start your presentation for the group, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for having us in this session. Actually, those are really interesting conversations about data protection and the ownership structure for data. So I am Gloria, and John and I work for a tech company from Asia, headquartered in Singapore, called Ontology. So the specialty of the company is basically to develop technology using blockchain and decentralized identity and decentralized data management technologies to try to apply certain solutions to some real world issues. So one of the scenarios we've been looking at, how can the technology be useful, is in the space of IoT and the data protection for individuals. So I am working together with John for ecosystem development. So it's very important for us to be talking to experts and also people who are interested in this topic to see how can we best apply the technology, if that's a solution relevant already, or if that's a solution will be relevant in the very near future for solving this type of issues. I will leave it to John to maybe also introduce himself.
Thank you, Gloria. And guys, hopefully you can hear me better now. Thank you, Joss. So as Gloria mentioned before, my name is John, and I collaborate together with the Ontology team, which is a company headquartered in Singapore, to kind of expand what we know about data and how that actually affects the ecosystem in the 21st century, but also give the tools, developers, to companies, to startups, politicians, and anyone that want to build on top of our technology, right tools for them to understand why actually data matters, what you can do with that data, whether that's your own data or acquired data, and furthermore, how to create a reliable ecosystem where trust actually remains the vital tool, but furthermore, how to make a regulated economy and a transparent economy based on that collection of data. And we do that using different tools. The most well-known tool in technology is blockchain. And furthermore, we use cryptographic technology on top of that, and is a good merge on how IoT, blockchain, cryptographic, advanced Intel, even AI plugin solutions merge and convert to create these ecosystems. And in the past, blockchain has been a buzzword. I'm sure everyone in here has heard about it. We took it a step forward. We realized how to make something concrete, something that works, something that people can understand, how to manipulate your data, how to have access to your data, to gain access to it, but also to know what's happening with it. We have built 2 concrete solutions where people can actually fool around and play with it. The first one is a B2C app called the Onto app. You can download it on iOS or Android, and you have immediate access to data protection solutions. And the second one, technology and a framework and a protocol that we build with a car manufacturer. Maybe Gloria can correct me if I'm wrong, if I can mention the name of that company, a German car manufacturer company. Yeah. So the name of the company is Daimler. Daimler is the holding company of Mercedes-Benz. So we work with them in their HQ in the south of Germany to develop a technology called Welcome Home, and it connects Ontology's solution for data advanced networks and Mercedes-Benz mobile console that every single car has, which is called the MBX. So using our blockchain data protocols integrated into their cars, the end user will have not only a one-click experience, but also it will have all the advanced technology of protecting their data, having access to it, but also monetizing on it in the further future. And this is something we have built in the last year concretely, so people can actually understand why data matters and why is the gold of the 21st century. Instead of Bitcoin, many claim it is.
Yeah, we understand that people might have some, misconceptions or limited understanding about what is blockchain. So we're not going to talk about blockchain today. We're going to talk about if what we're proposing could be an alternative way of solving the problems Freyja and Jakub was talking about previously. One thing that we see, because we've been also looking into the issue, one thing we've seen is that it's not like if we just install more regulations to not have organizations touch upon these personal data, it's going to fly very far, because on one hand, there's many very intrinsic problems there. You can somehow trick consumers to consent anyways, as Jakub was saying. On the other hand, these data actually are sources of value creation for a lot of companies. So they can do customization, they can do personalization, they can connect different services to make it very convenient for the individuals. So imagine if you go to a website and this website doesn't even know what you like, what you're looking for. You have to be searching like from countless amount of products to find the ones you like. It's not very convenient for you, right? So if the website knows from a lot of other data sources what you like and recommend things to you, that saves you time, but at the cost currently, compromising your own data privacy. So we're trying to see if there's a way we can balance those two things, and that was also how the conversation started with Daimler. So they want to produce a experience for their car drivers. That they sit in a car, sit in any car or any mobility devices with Daimler. They feel like they don't have to verify themselves constantly. They don't have to tell the devices what to do because the devices knows them already. So it's a very good experience for them, like coming home. But at the same time, how do you ensure that their data are secure and is not abused, right? So that's how the conversation started. Now we have a conceptual product. It's still at the stage of a minimal viable or proof of concept stage, but we would like to share it with you. So maybe as a whole group that we can push things forward a bit, because we are from the technology industry. We don't really know so much about user scenarios, so that's something we can build together. And it's not only limited to cars, it could actually also apply to any smart devices use a lot of data of individuals. So yeah, I think that could be a different change for just talking. I will share my screen and show you how that product looks like with a hypothetical user journey. So Josh, I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah, you should be allowed to do that. Tell me if you have any problems.
Okay, thanks. So, yeah, I'm gonna skip the first several part of it, and we're gonna start just here. So in this hypothetical scenario, we have a user called Julia. So she's a Mercedes-Benz owner, and she has this Welcome Home app, where it's basically her data wallet for her mobility experiences. So how she register on this app? So she logs in, and for the very first time, she will need to verify her identity, submitting the regular information. Also, she will need to upload her driver's license and identity card to verify herself. And here, as you see, like she's able to actually in the setting manipulate what kind of data are shared in what ways, right? So in the privacy setting, she can choose what kind of data are available for different third-party service providers. And this is basically a list of the service providers. So in this case, we have a service provider called Free to Share. So for Free to Share, she will be able to share her data in the ways how she would like to do. For example, like if she wants to, in this case, she wants to rent a car, then she will need to share her location data. And that is only shared to this Free to Share application, which is basically a third-party provider for another app. And after that, what you've seen is that she creates a profile. So this is the profile that contains some preferences of her in-car experience, such as her music, her seating, different lighting. This is just an example because as Freyja was talking about, there are a lot of data generated from your in-car experience and your driving history. So those data can all be represented some way here, and you can choose certain settings of such data to store on different profiles. For example, you could have like a relax profile that is more, entertainment service related. You could have like a drive while working profile where you can plug in some of your work related applications, right? So this is all based on your preference. And once this type of profiles are established, it's connected to your account, right? And whenever you go to a different vehicle, different car, you could apply such settings so that vehicle will have access to your data to customize and condition the car into one that you're familiar with that you're like. So you have a very personalized driver's experience. Yeah. The next step is basically showing how you set these different profiles and duplicate it to, as I said, create another setting like driving while working, for example. So now our hypothetical user, Julia, goes to another city, another country in Stuttgart, right? So she goes to Stuttgart and she will need to rent a car for her local drive around. So John is going to explain that part because now she's in Germany.
Okay, hopefully my connection is good enough for doing this. So once you have a one-click login, so actually this goes together with the question that was asked by Juan. The data that we are preserving is not the whole data itself of the journey, it's just the login, the authentication login data from the customer, right? So when it comes to your profile with the rental and interoperability, since you're going to be in a new country, you don't have to go through the tedious work of registering once more, giving your data once more to a centralized silo that you don't know what's happening else with that data that you're giving in a new country. Europe is protected by GDPR to some extent, but if you're in another country where the GDPR doesn't apply, then you don't know what happened. Is it going to be offered to Amazon? Is it going to be offered to Netflix? Is it going to be offered to any other service provider, right? So once you enter a new country, you're going to do it with one click. So if Gloria, if you can move forward with the presentation because I don't have access to it.
So yeah, so yeah, sorry. Continue, John.
No worries. So you're going to be using Fleet to Share, which is a service, for example, in Germany that uses Mercedes-Benz cars. And all what you're going to do, since you have a login authentication already with Welcome Home, you're going to select the country, you're going to select the car, you're going to select your likes and dislikes, which are already saved and preserved only for you to have control over it. And then this is going to recognize your profile already. So your music, is it going to recognize what you like to listen to, what you like to order in case you would like to purchase something on the way, but also what is your journey? Are you a comfortable rider? Are you an aggressive rider? Do you like the back end of the road? You're only in the German Autobahn. So all of these likes are going to be saved in this platform, and you will have the possibility to actually use the same file that you have been using all of this time, or actually you can create a new profile if you want only for that country where you are having the journey. And again, the data will be preserved by the tech we're building in here. So Gloria, if you can click
Sure.
forward.
I'll just, I think to the interest of this audience, I'll just add one example to what John said, right? So this is a little bit fast, so we'll do it again. As you can see, basically, currently, you can also do something similar on your phone, right? You can go to another like Uber or another rental service app, and basically they have all your data, and as some of the other speaker was talking about, you basically click consent, and all these data are basically accessible to them. You don't know what exactly was accessed, but because you need to use their services, they access your data, and you don't even know if they store it or not. But here, as you can see, when Julia was renting the car, so she basically goes to another app from Welcome Home. And here you do like one-stop KYC. Here, basically the app asks you, do you grant the access of this type of data that is necessary for this service? And you say yes, and then that data is only used this time. And you can impair the vehicle. So when you actually impair the vehicle from after ending the rental, as you can see, you have all the data access details stored on the chain. And that data accessor, free to share, no longer have access to your data after the service is completed. Yes, John.
Yeah, Freyja mentioned a very interesting point as well, which I would love to discuss later. But indeed, the car manufacturer still holds enormous power on that data that's being collected. So this has been mentioned before, but it's very important to remember that cars nowadays, they don't function as a vehicle anymore. They are not an instrument that will take you from point A to point B. Actually, they are data collectors, right? They're consuming and they are absorbing a lot of data, not only from you as a driver, as a direct drivers, and the people that might be next to you, but also the city and also other drivers, right? So this is something that car manufacturers still hold a lot of power and still preserve it. And furthermore, the centralized silo of the storage itself of the data is still centralized, whether that's AWS or IBM or Azure from Microsoft. So yes, Freyja, this is still a point. What we're trying to build in here is at least preserving the connecting data from the driver, so the login and the likes and dislikes at least are being preserved by not only blockchain, but also cryptographic technology, right? However, and I agree with you, the end preservation of the data, the collection and the storage of the data sadly remains centralized to some degree, but still there are some companies that are already working in decentralized storage. This is a conversation for another time, but this is being developed already, decentralized storage. So we hope in the future as a company to not only give access to data and log in one click, preserving your data and collecting it, but also to have a decentralized storage ecosystem. This is something we're going to be working on in the future. So for ending, yes, sorry, Joss.
No, please. I was just going to ask you to wrap up so that we can move to the panel session. I'll bring your questions into that. Thank you.
No worries. So end your rental and data access detail. Basically, when you're happy with what has been shared and what will be distributed, you can just end the rental, end your profile, and you're going to have access to what was shared, what stays in the app itself, and what you wish to share in the future when you do another rental, whether in that country, city, or continent, whatever you find yourself. So I think for point 5 and 6, Gloria will wrap it up. And thank you everyone for here.
Sure. So as we all know that smart devices are not just for functioning in the future as a car. It's also have a lot of social networking and features built in there, right? So if you want to share your experience with your friend, so she has the access to like your itinerary, the service providers you used, even the restaurants you go to, she can do that, accessing your data with your authorization. But this is still, she's only accessing it to enable her services, but this is not really storing your data in a safe way. So yeah, so to basically, just to wrap up, this may sound like a really good solution, right, to our problem. The biggest problem is, on one hand, the entire industry is still working on having this decentralized storage technology more valid, more ready to be used. So we don't have to store the personal data with some third-party providers or third-party manufacturers. We can just store the data locally with our decentralized cloud or with our decentralized storage at local devices. The other problem is, currently a lot of these service providers, they prefer to actually maintain the way how they're working now, meaning store your data in their closed door servers. So without some sort of like push from the people who want to have their control of their own data, it's really hard to make this happen. Some companies might be pioneering this, but this is not enough to make the switch. Even though technology is ready to actually enable that, we still need to push this equilibrium towards the protection of personal data.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Gloria. Thank you very much, John.
So, yeah.
So we've got 15 minutes left now, and I think it's brilliant that you've been able to provide us with a case study in the real world, and it's great to see some real brands up there and some shots of some apps and people interacting with things, because I think it helps make the conversation real. So we've seen 3 very different presentations and picking up on common issues. I mean, we can see consent and notice coming up through all of those presentations as a particular area of discussion. We've seen some talk about wearables and about how the fact that these are devices which are designed to be unconsciously, so this data is being delivered. We've seen a presentation about how data which we generate from vehicles. Someone's got a microphone. Thank you, Gloria. How we've seen how data that's created within our vehicles, how do we think about taking that data out into our real lives? And then we've seen a really interesting application which thinks about it in the other way. How do we bring more of our lives into the vehicles to make that a more rewarding experience? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask a question now, but I really would like people to raise their hands, and so I can bring in some perspectives from the floor that you can share with the group. While there's not a hand in the air, I would like us just to step back a little bit to there was an early question about this question of whose data is it anyway? My data and our data, and Freyja made the point very clearly about the fact that there isn't a legal basis for property in that personal data. How does the panel feel that this is going, what the routes forward are in this area of data where there are clearly shared access rights to the data that's being generated by these assets? Freyja, I don't know if you've got a view about what you see as the likely paths forward to resolve these.
Yeah, so again, with respect to cars, there are a few layers, roads, approaches to this data. There's not one solution that is going to fit all and everyone. So at the moment, at the European level at least, there is this discussion and a call also to regulate the access and the data flows that come from cars. So as I mentioned in my presentation, the car manufacturers, and they are already doing that, they propose this extended vehicle model, whereas indeed all of the data is going to flow through their backend servers, and from that will be distributed to any interested party. I don't see that changing in the short term until indeed we will have some kind of regulation that is going to control that. What is interesting at the moment is indeed, again, so I'm at the moment focusing on Europe. So most of my examples are from Europe. I apologize for the international audience here. But as you may know, like I said, there's this Data Governance Act that has been published at the European level, and they are now, or Europe is developing these data spaces. So one of them is the mobility data space. Indeed, how do we enable the data that is coming from cars to be beneficial, for example, for governments, for municipalities to develop smart cities? So in that, I think that a lot of other players, aftermarket service providers, governments are really going to demand to have access to this data. So if we have a strong demand coming from everybody else besides the car manufacturers, they will have to, I do think that the car is going to open up and the ecosystem is going to open up. How it's going to work out in practice, then, yeah, that is really, I mean, it's a very volatile market at the moment, and there's a lot of interests, competing interests as well. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I really think that it's going to be on a certain level. Another example is the equal legislation that we've had, and we also have the I didn't talk about that, but there's the right to repair, for example. So that's a US notion more than it is a European notion, but based on that idea is that you as a owner of the car should have the freedom to decide who is going to repair your car. So in order to repair a bit of a modern car, the car repair manufacturer must know all of the technology that is in the car and what your error code that I talked about tells them about what is wrong with your car. So based on that, we now have EU legislation, and it's an international, I mean, many countries have this type of regulation. In the US, for example, we also have that. So everybody should have access to this type of data from your car. So this is the type of data that is necessary to be able to repair your car. So this should be free, without a fee, or at least not, well, it can be done with a reasonable fee, but it should be available non-discriminatory for everyone, basically. So if we take that and we can now expand that type of regulation to other type of data, which we show is beneficial, I think that that is also a very interesting development that could indeed be happening soon. I'll shut up now to see if somebody else wants to wants to join and share their thoughts on this.
Thank you. Anyone else from the panel or indeed the audience? Michael, you've got your hand up. You get priority over the panel.
Sure. I mean, I like to speak, so. I guess the challenge, I think, too, in whether you take the automotive case or you take some of the other areas, is some of the data is legitimately okay, if I take the car, the timing sequence and the firing sequences of injection of fuel injectors and cylinders, or potentially air pressures or brake, there's hundreds of sensors and devices inside a car, and a lot of it is just basic operational data of the car that's used for it. And really, yes, it's my car, but no, I don't care. And this is one of the challenges that exist in far more complex industrial systems. You take an aircraft engine. Rolls-Royce and GE have instrumented the heck out of those engines, and they stream gigabytes of data in every flight. GE and Rolls-Royce owns that data. That doesn't go to EasyJet or American Airlines, and that causes a challenge even in the in the business setting. So it's not I think some of the obvious ones of where your car is located seems to be easy, but in the whole IoT sector, it's not clear cut, right? And it's not just as individuals that are frustrated. It can be actually businesses can be frustrated as well, because they'd like some of that data, but they have no rights to get access to it.
Michael, I think that's really interesting. I made a note through the discussion that there's a separation here between the access to the physical asset and the access to the data from that physical asset, whereas the physical asset can have some concept of ownership around it. And what you've said there, it occurs to me that the difference within the Rolls-Royce model around those engines is that Rolls-Royce retain the ownership of those engines. They retain the legal title to those, and effectively they are on a lease model, on a service lease model into those aircraft. Can we see that perhaps that might drive change within the automotive industry? I mean, if we're aiming to reduce car ownership as part of a reducing carbon process, will manufacturers aim to lease their vehicles to people so that they can preserve that same data access? Is that a likely outcome?
I don't think so. I think it's possible in the vehicle, but I think that, well, I guess maybe the fair answer is I don't know. I've certainly seen reports in the Wall Street Journal, it was probably about a year ago, where either the CEO of Ford or General Motors made some comment about, where you drive your car and all that. That's they consider that their information, and they're going to sell it to advertisers, taking the internet ad tech model. Though they may not have quite that explicit, and you don't have the ability to turn it off, right?
John, Gloria, do you have a view on that from your experience of working, within the industry? I'm not asking you to represent, your clients' opinions, but I wonder what you've seen about that attitude about data access from the manufacturers.
I think we've been monitoring different data privacy lawsuits, like what kind of what's the final ruling in terms of who actually owns the data there. I think it's still a very young area. Most of the countries do not really know what to do with this type of things, and I see some countries, especially in Asia, I would say, Asia is more commercial friendly in this sense, and people trade privacy for convenience maybe a bit more. US might be somewhere in between, and Europe is more conservative in that regard. So there's a lot of gray areas for selling data, some gray markets in selling data. And the lawsuits arbitrating this type of things mostly actually grant the data rights to the service provider. So their logic is, if the service provider put in the most effort technologically or business-wise to make that data comprehensible, intelligent, and can be telling some useful information for decision-making in the business, then they put in the most effort, and they own that outcome of this data value, which I think is debatable. Probably, yeah, it's a debatable problem, and it might be a dangerous tendency that we're ruling such ownership towards the processor or the data provider or service provider of the platforms.
Any other perspectives from the panel on that topic?
Yeah, so something that Michael mentioned as well. Indeed, if you do not, I mean, how much choice do you have as the driver if you do not agree to share your data at the moment? For example, I mean, I really don't want to put any of the vehicle manufacturers on spot, but yeah, I've just been looking at a few examples of a few of the more advanced car manufacturers. For example, Tesla says if you do not agree to sharing this data, you are risking your car. You are some of the safety tools in your car will not work. So who then is going to turn that off, right? I mean, they need this type of data to be shared with them in order for your car to function safely. Well, how much choice then do you have? And then taking it from even yeah, so also considering it from a privacy perspective, maybe it's not so much a problem that this data is being generated, but does it have to be stored for so long? Can it not just be used within the system and safe traveling of your vehicle, but then just be deleted? Why does it have to be sent to other parties to use in the future? So then that is also something that I haven't seen much of a discussion, for example, about the ownership of anonymized data. Everybody just seems to accept that the moment it's anonymized, you don't have any control over it anymore. It's not yours anymore. But still, there's a lot of value in anonymized data, and who should benefit from the value from anonymized data? So the whole question about monetizing car data, well, any IoT device data, I think that there was still a lot of things to be discussed, and how the ecosystem is going to develop. I mean, it's a characteristic of ecosystem businesses, right? We all know the big five, the big data platforms. So it goes really quickly. So we do need to be on top of it, and we do need to enforce these discussions in the open as well. Before we know it, it's too late, and we'll have another Facebook disaster on our hands. So yeah,
that's a great lead into the last question I'd like to have the panel. We're just running out of time now. We're coming to our close. So I'm going to thank our panel, but I'm going to ask sort of a couple of word answer to my question from each member of the panel as we go. And Jakub, I'm going to start with you just so that you've got some warning. So first of all, let me say thank you to all our speakers. It's been some really insightful input, and thank you for the audience for your attention and your engagement. Well, I'd like the panel to talk back to the group about the one thing that the MyData community should be doing in this space over the next year, so that we can do something positive in the direction of making sure that we can support the development of innovative IoT technologies whilst preserving people's privacy and rights. And as I said, Jakub, I warned you, so I said I was going to start with you.
Thank you, Jos. I think that we could help to spread the knowledge, because as long as this is a really specialized segment, I think that the most of people really do not care, do not any interact of wearables, of cars, and only use it. And so we should point and some the biggest issue, and write articles and to debate with people, so it get more into the society, and so even the people of their choice will choose the better ways. For example, if they will know that some products are really dangerous. There was something about Zoom and its problems with privacy, and many of my friends didn't want to use it anymore. So I think this might be the role of us.
Thank you. And John, how's your connection running? Have you got enough? Oh, brilliant. If you give us just a couple of words on what we could do next as a...
Yeah, so from perspective, I'm a bit more gloomy in these topics. So I do agree with Michael in several points. So what we need to do as an industry is to actually make data and data protection sexy. This is a task, because the younger, I'm 34, and my generation actually doesn't care anymore about data, to be fairly honest. So the younger generation, which is heavily addicted to social media, to gadgets, to cell phone, to whatever that have an internet connection, and the world economies and the new economies, call it China, India, are even more addicted than the established economy when it comes down to social media and internet usage. So these younger generation has to be instructed in a way that they care about it. So if you teach them or you educate them about data and why it matters on a very boring level, they're not going to care why they should hear you when Kanye West is talking about shoes, right? So the idea in here is how to educate the society, the younger generation, in a way that they think about it, that they care about it, and data protection is actually sexy. My data matters, why it matters, and I have the answers. This needs to be done. So applications need to make it better. We as an industry need to make it better, need to communicate it better. And this is something that sadly I'm not seeing very well done in the industry, whether IoT, AI, blockchain, and many others, right? But the car manufacturers are doing it great. The car manufacturers are selling their cars fantastically. Take Tesla as an example. And they're still stealing your data, but they have great communication tools and great marketing. And this is something we have to be on the same level. This is my humble opinion.
Brilliant, thank you. Gloria, have you got a perspective from your side?
Yeah, so even though we are coming from Asia, especially me personally, I actually see a lot of hope in Europe leading this whole thing because, to be fair, right, most of the European user data are with American companies right now. So not only the users are handing over their data, but also like European startups are not really benefiting from all the insights could have provided by this type of data. So I think there's like an emerging consensus that this is also bad for business. It's also bad for a real competitive, fair environment. So I think I was kind of hoping that MyData community could be the driving force to drive certain consensus there. Like, first of all, this is bad for business. This is bad for entrepreneurship in Europe. Second of all, I very much agree with Freyja and Jakub that we should promote ownership, like clearer definition of data ownership. Third, portability. Portability is key. Like if we can do like open banking in Europe to the other fields of IoT, then we have a lot of potential for new innovation and the new ways. People will be coming up new ways of protecting data in that sense.
Thank you. That's very clear. And Freyja, I'll give a couple of words, and we're over time already, so we'll hear from Freyja and then we'll close.
Just cut me off because I can talk about this topic for hours and hours.
Okay. You've got 30 seconds. And then
30 seconds, oh my God, okay. What do I want to say? Yeah, so I totally agree that portability is key. The only thing is I mean, there's a shift going on, and I think that's a really important shift. We've been talking about empowering the people, empowering the individual. That in practice is pretty hard to do because indeed, like Josh already said, some people, I'm going to go against the idea that people don't care about privacy. Privacy is not dead. Don't have this defeatism attitude. I really strongly believe that we can still change something, but there's also a large group of people who, I'm not going to say they don't care, but they maybe don't have the time, don't have the interest. There's just a lot of stuff going on. So we need people like the MyData operators to take this over from the people, so they don't have on a day-to-day basis have to decide whether or not to click consent and to accept and accept and accept and accept. So we need indeed these intermediaries who are really really have our best interest at hand. So that's one thing, and indeed,
your first 30 seconds.
That's the first 30 seconds. Okay, great.
Okay, I think that's brilliant. I think that's a lovely place to close, Freyja. I'm gonna cut, as you requested yourself. Again, thank you to our panel. Thank you to the audience. Please take the time to reach out to each other. You've seen the people in the room who are interested in this topic. Reach out to the members of the panel, and I'm sure there's some great conversations that we can have going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joss, as well, for doing such a good session host.
Yes, thank you.